It is an honor and a privilege to be joined by the first female boxer in history to represent Great Britain on the Olympic stage, the five-time ABA winner, two-time world title challenger, but most importantly, on February 19th, she looks to cash in her destiny and finally become a world champion on the undercard of one of the most iconic cards of all time in Britain, the biggest grudge match in UK history, Khan versus Brook. Tell me, champ, how are your emotions right now?
The closer it's getting, you know what it's like. You start getting more excited, a mixture of excitement, nerves, and I just, like you said, it's a huge card. It's massive for my profile, and I just want to perform the way I know I can.
Absolutely. Now, 17 years ago, you started your boxing journey. Did you ever think that not only will you become successful in the sport, but you transcended an entire sport? You're a trailblazer for female boxing. Did you ever think that you would achieve such monumental achievements?
No, the only thing that I wanted to do when I first went into the gym was just to go and lose a bit of weight, get a bit of confidence back, and get active. For a lot of my childhood, I was very active. And I went to America, had an injury playing soccer, and I came back and I stopped being active. It mentally affected me. And I wanted to get back to them positive ways of being active and doing something good. And I went into boxing with them intentions, not even to compete, just to get back active, get back fit, get back confidence, and do something. And 17 years later, here I am. So it wasn't a bad decision.
Not at all. And actually, 7 years after you started your journey, you went to the biggest stage of all, the London 2012 Olympics, when you fought Katie Taylor in one of the greatest female fights, one of the greatest fights ever, to be honest, when you look back at it. What memories do you take from that night? I mean, the atmosphere was just phenomenal that night.
Yeah, I think so I came out of the Olympics with no medal, but with an Olympic record, which was for the loudest crowd participation noise.
Wow.
For us, I think, we every single competition that we ever went to was abroad. Most of the majors, everything was just always abroad, and nothing was ever here in Britain. So when you go abroad, obviously with politics and the things that happen in the world, Britain is not a very well-liked country. So, we go somewhere and they announce our names, and it's no disrespect to us as individual people, but, the whole world hates us. So we get booed a lot. And then, you go to the Olympics and 99% of the people that were there were actually cheering for you. So when I first went out for the Queen Underwood fight, everyone they said, next in the ring, Jonas of Great Britain, and the whole crowd went crazy. And I was like, wow, it's so different having people cheering for you. And then obviously, I came against Katie, and now Katie in Ireland and in boxing is like,
an all-time great.
Yeah, everyone, even as athletes ourselves, when she fought, everyone stops and watched. Everyone who's taken part, all the coaches, everyone just stops and watches. And Ireland are a very, very passionate country, and they always support their own. So we had England and Great Britain, but we also had Ireland mixing with that, and it was just the atmosphere. Like, people say, like, how was it? There's nothing really that I can ever compare that to. So it was an amazing event, and even though it didn't go my way, I still have fond memories, for the simple fact, at that point in time, in that moment, I couldn't have done any more. So I came away with, like, okay, just the better girl won on the day. Like, I couldn't have done any more. I give absolutely everything, and I can be proud of that.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about Katie Taylor, there's a funny story that Eddie Hearn talked about Katie Taylor. He was like, the first time that I met her, she was like, hey, Eddie, I truly believe that I can change this sport. And he was like, so what are you passionate about? What are your hobbies? She was like, I like God and boxing. And he was like, whoa, that's powerful. Okay. So she's always been special, definitely. And even when you guys became professionals, when you fought her a few months ago, I mean, another Fight of the Year candidate. And it was such a close decision. I mean, you've always been there. You've always been like just a tiny bit away from claiming supremacy and becoming a world champion. But back in 2015, you decided to hang up your gloves after such a illustrious amateur career. What were your emotions back then when you decided to retire?
For me, I got injured in the Commonwealth Games, and the injury meant, a lot of rehabilitation and time out. And it meant that I wouldn't be able to qualify for Rio. Knowing that I wouldn't qualify for Rio, I didn't have any intentions of ever staying for 2020 in Tokyo. So I thought, right, if I'm gonna if I can't make Rio, which it's going to be impossible, then I may as well retire. And I left boxing. That was such a hard decision because, all my life, well, not for all my life, but for the majority of my adult life, I was always Natasha the boxer. And all of a sudden, I felt like part of my identity was taken away when I wasn't that boxer anymore. And you when you're an athlete, you're so dedicated and selfish and all these things to just concentrate on results, that when that's taken away, like my whole life was dedicated to boxing for a very long time. And when that's taken away, it was a hard void to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. And most importantly, you're back now. And not only are you back, but you're at the mountaintop. Now, am I onto something when I say that your lucky number is 7? And let me tell you why. 7 years after boxing, you went to the Olympics, the biggest stage of all. And on your 7th professional fight, you had your biggest character building test when you suffered your first professional loss. And 7 years exactly after your retirement, you're about to become a world champion next week. So am I onto something here?
I'd like to think so. That's a good analogy. I'll use that.
Yes, absolutely. And I truly believe that. I mean, you can't script this truly. When you look back at your journey, the ups, the downs, it all makes sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like I say, there's nothing that I regret, even the bad times like the opener. It made me I had to go away, work on myself mentally more than physically. And I came back a better boxer. And I think that proved in the Harper fight. And then again, I pushed it on even further. And in the KT fight, so yeah, even the tough times and the not so great times, it still made me the person and the athlete that I am today. So I take it all on board, the good and the bad.
Absolutely. And speaking of that Terry Harper fight, let's go back to August 7th, 2020. One of the fights of the year also. I mean, let's be honest, that was one of the biggest robberies in boxing in the past few years. I mean, as I was watching that fight, all respect to Terry Harper. She's a young phenom, 23 years old, I believe, when you fought her. A lot of hype was on her. But then you just stepped in, cool, calm, and collected, silent assassin, and you just put on a performance of a lifetime. I mean, that was some iconic stuff right there. But when that decision was announced, I couldn't help but feel those emotions of like, this is why people aren't drawn to boxing anymore. This is the exact reason why most people are transferring now into mixed martial arts in the UFC and Bellator and Eagle FC, Khabib's Eagle FC. It's because of those decisions. I mean, it takes a lot out of you. Nobody can bring back that night. You put your all into that night. I mean, you put on a performance of a lifetime. And they robbed you. Let's be honest. I mean, everyone knows that was one of the biggest robberies I've ever seen. When you look back at that night, what were your emotions when the draw was called?
I was obviously disappointed. But again, you just have to take the positives. And the positives was, before the fight, everyone said I was too old. They said I wasn't as good as I was before. They said I couldn't make the weight. They said, there was a load of lists. I wasn't fit enough. And they just made a list of things that I couldn't do. And I was offended. I literally was. I was looking, I was thinking, like, these people are cheeky to think that, like, that she's that much better than me. I felt insulted. And I thought, right, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I felt like after that fight, the positive from it was that I kind of I felt like I proved myself, and everyone agreed. And like you say, a lot of people thought I won the fight. I thought I won the fight.
You won that fight.
So
you won that fight.
But it's the horrible side of boxing, and it makes it even worse when there's no accountability to anyone. That fight, I win that fight, it changes my life. It changes the purses that I get from then going forward, and that's, you know, that affects me, my family, you know, and
Yeah.
that's sometimes the downside, like you say, to boxing. And it happens amateur and professional. And sometimes there's decisions in amateur where people get the wrong decision and then they can't go to the Olympics, which affects their lives. You know, getting to the Olympics is the pinnacle of a amateur boxer career. And if you're denied that just because of nothing that you've done, but because of, you know, a judge or a referee, it's you know, it's heartbreaking, because people don't see all the work that goes on behind the scenes. You know, for the Olympics, it's 4 years. You know, you're training, going to different competitions, trying to get the rankings to go. But, you know, for the professional side, you know, 12 weeks in a lockdown, when I had to have my little daughter with me, going into training sessions, and it was just me, my daughter, Joe, my sparring partners, all getting tested, and just bubbling between ourselves, where it was so intense. And you know, to go back to my daughter after that 12 weeks of sacrifice and be like, babe, we didn't get it, because she always says, Mum, did you get the belt? Did you get it? And I had to say no, and that was more heartbreaking, because she's seen the work that went into that camp, and she's seen everything behind the scenes. And I wanted to bring it back as a token to her and be like, babe, we did it. And I was denied that.
Absolutely. Well, you get another chance next weekend, and just like you said, everything happens for a reason. And I truly believe that that was such a character building test for you, because most people would have just called it quits. Maybe that's not for me. Maybe I'm not meant to become a world champion. But here you are, signed with Boxer. I mean, they're doing Ben Shalom, I believe, right? He's doing such phenomenal stuff in the boxing world right now. And he is a much needed link in the sport right now. Don't you think so?
I think he's like a breath of fresh air. He's not one who wants to, you know, be seen on screen. He just wants to put the fights on and let the boxing and the shows talk for themselves. And I think, you know, for me, I've got a good relationship with Ben, and the opportunities that he provided me. He said before I signed with him, like, what do you want? I said, look, I want this. Can you do it? He said, I promise I will have that done. And one of them things was to get me a world title shot, and he's provided that. So I've got no complaints with Ben at all.
Absolutely. And when you talk about robberies, when you talk about the ups and downs, I just can't help but compare your career to fellow all-time great, former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping. I had the honor of meeting him back in Toronto a few years ago. And when you look back at both you guys' career, it's almost identical. Like in his last title eliminator, when he fought Chael Sonnen, he was robbed in that fight. But then he was like, I'm never going to get a world championship, world title shot again. But then on short notice, just like yourself right now, he got a call to fight Luke Rockhold. He was a 7-1 underdog at 37 years of age, came in, made a statement, shocked the world, knocked out Luke Rockhold in the first round. So do you take any inspiration from the likes of Michael Bisping, who had such monumental ups and monumental downs also? I mean, like, this is the highest highs and the lowest lows happen only in combat sports. So do you take any inspiration from Michael Bisping?
Yeah, I grab inspiration from wherever I see it. You know, there isn't any athlete that I know, not just in boxing, just athletes in general, that hasn't had, you know, disasters, hasn't thought that their career was over, hasn't had to change sports, that, you know, even Jess Ennis broke her takeoff leg, I think, and had to learn to take off on a different leg for the long jump and for other things. So, you know, when you see that, I do read a lot, and I watch a lot, like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan and his mindset. I love the way the human brain works, and it's not for some people, for some reason, athletes, not everyone's the same, but athletes' mindsets are just different. It's just that mindset that makes you from being good to being great, or from being, you know, average to being amazing. And it's that I like how they explain themselves and how what their thoughts were, more than their situations, because I just think, you know, the adversity, your body can do absolutely anything that you want it to do, but your mind has to be with it, and that's the thing that I think is key. You know, your mindset and how you go about challenges and how you pick yourself up and how you go on and be great. I think that's more important than actual situations themselves. And there's so many great examples of that you know, you could go on forever.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're inside the storm, so you can't really look and smell the roses, but from the outside looking in, it is such a risky sport. I mean, when someone decides to become a combat athlete, literally one injury, like 1 month in to your training and your journey, everything can be taken away. So for you to gamble on yourself and take that huge leap of faith and risk, it takes a lot. And just like you said, not everyone is built for it, but most people aren't built for it, because not only does it require a lot of physical endurance and abilities, but also, most importantly, the mindset. You're going to have to be at peace with yourself to a certain extent that this might not work for me, but you know what? I'm rolling the dice. This is my destiny. I want to become a world champion, and I'm just going to keep going until the wheels fall off, until I can't do this no more. Like, it takes such courage that the admiration and respect that I have for combat athletes, it's indescribable. I mean, you guys are the true real life heroes, I mean, in this world.
No, I don't think like that, but like, when you say it like that, it makes us sound insane. But you are constantly taking a gamble on yourself, knowing that you can fail, and you pick yourself back up and you can fail again, and you can try even harder and fail again. But it's that persistence of, no matter what happens, I'm going to keep going, and that it does make you sound insane. But it's just what we love, and that's it. You know, I would rather sit there in 20 years' time and say, you know, I tried that and it didn't work out, or you can sit there in 20 years' time and think, oh,
I
if I would have
wish.
done that, what if? Yeah, what if I would have done that? Like,
Yep.
so I'd rather do it, take the chance and fail, than not do it at all and wonder what would have happened.
Absolutely. Now, two men that are taking the chance and having their legacies on the line, the headliners on your card. Maybe some might say it's 10 years late, the fight, but I can't wait for it. I mean, this is literally one of the biggest, if not the biggest domestic fight in Britain's history, one of the biggest grudge matches in UK history. Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. Break this fight down for me. How do you think it's going to unfold? Because I keep having scenarios in my head and how who's going to win, how the fight is going to unfold, and I have no idea. 10 years ago, we had no idea. And until this day, it's even tougher to call it right now when both aren't in their prime.
It is. I think that's what makes it exciting for here in Britain. Like, you're either a Khan fan or a Brook fan. There's no in between. There's nobody sitting on the line. You pick a side and you have to stick with it. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. It'd be different if one was a bit more active than the other, but they've both been inactive. They're both probably a little bit past their peaks. But if there's one person that can bring the best out of the other person, it's them two, it's each other. So there's a million scenarios the way the fight can go, and I just think if Khan is anywhere near his best, that it's going to be hard for Brook. Yeah, it's going to be hard for Brook to land. But if Amir sometimes gets this, you know, with fighters, like with me, if you say you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do this, you can't do that, I'm like, I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong.
Chip on your shoulder.
Say to Amir, yeah, people say to Amir, you haven't got a chin. You haven't got a chin. You can't take a punch. You can't. So sometimes he stands there and trades with people to please everybody else, to prove to you and to him that he has got a chin. And if he does that with Kell, that'll be his downfall, because Kell can punch. And I think
precision.
It's a boxing. Yeah, it's a boxing fight. So there is going to be a point where you get hit and everyone will be holding their breath. But I just think I can't anywhere near his best, doesn't let Kell land clean like that. And if he sticks to what is his best assets, which is his quick hands and quick feet, I think Kell will struggle.
And to be fair, when it comes to Amir Khan, I mean, the man has been fighting one of the hardest hitters in the sport. You got Canelo Alvarez, you got even Prescott, the first man to defeat him back in 2012, I believe. I mean, he's also he used to be a power puncher back then. So to be fair to Amir Khan, I see a lot of criticism when it comes to his chin. Yeah, he can't absorb any shot. But let's be fair, the man's been fighting killers and such power punchers, and all it takes is in the small ounces, like 8-ounce gloves, 10-ounce gloves, all it takes is just one clean shot to but I truly believe that when it comes to this fight, like Kell Brook seems to be so emotionally invested in the fight. And I believe that that can also cause him a lot of trouble. Because you see, Amir Khan, it's almost like, I mean, he said that Kell Brook is kind of jealous and bitter towards him. But I kind of understand where where he's coming from. But at the same time, it's like Kell Brook just wants to kill Amir Khan. I mean, he's literally just on fire right now. He wants to take his head off. So that is going to be, I can't wait. I just can't wait for that fight.
Yeah, I think with boxing, you have to be in control when you're out of control. So the first thing, if you're on the street or someone punches you, the first thing you want to do is react emotionally. That hurt, I'm going to punch you back. But in boxing, you have to be a little bit smarter.
Composure.
It's like a physical game of chess. So you have to put positions and put things in place to make your opponent do what you want. And if that's attached with emotion, them decisions are harder to make, because we've seen it at the weekend with Liam Williams. When he hates Chris Eubank that much, that he was so frustrated when he was winning the round, and he did come back and get better.
Yes.
Half only because Eubank let him.
He said his left hand was injured.
Yeah, that's what he said, and he also said he doesn't want to be cut, because Williams does get a bit dirty when he's losing. He goes in with the head. We've seen him go in with the elbow. We've seen a lot of things. So, and that's the type when it's all or nothing for people like that. And when it's like that, it's a little you're at a disadvantage, because you've got to keep your composure and be smart.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we absolutely can't wait for that fight, and your guess is just as good as mine, to be honest. Now, this year, 2022, is going to be it is the biggest year and the most significant year in female boxing ever. You got the Clarissa Shields versus your fellow Englishwoman, Savannah Marshall. That's, I believe, going to be happening in May. What do you think of that fight, too?
I mean, there's Taylor Serrano, which is, up until then, I believe will be the biggest female fight. But
Absolutely.
When that Clarissa and Savannah fight happens, I do believe that'll be the biggest female fight of all time, because like with, the Williams Eubank, like with the Khan Brook, there is a lot of emotions in there, and Clarissa absolutely hates the fact that she's been beaten by Savannah, and that's the only person ever to beat her, and she can't get over that, and she's so emotionally, we've seen it at the weekend, them going back and forth, and it adds excitement. It's a little bit WWE in the setup.
Yep.
But it's what we want to see. We want to see that passion, and like I said, when that time comes, it's like it's the UK versus US. That's it, and you pick a side, and and it's two females in their prime at their best. So that's going to be a great, and the same with Serrano and Taylor. You've got Katie and Serrano are pound for pound number 1 and number 2. So you've got them both in their peaks, both at their best, both believing they can win and wanting to fight, which is, it doesn't always happen with the men's, and sometimes it's a little bit harder to make them fights happen, because one will be with the WBA, one's the WBO, one's the WBC. So it's sometimes, but in female boxing, then fights are easier to make. So, they're both happening, which I'm so happy about. It's monumental for the sport. It's going to increase participation, have all eyes visible on it. And I just hope they both live up to the spectacle that they are going to be, because they're going to be big occasions.
Absolutely. And do you think Katie Taylor is slowing down a bit? Because in her last few fights, I mean, there's this narrative now that Amanda Serrano, she's being promoted now by Jake Paul, one of the biggest figures now in not only in combat sports, but in the world. I mean, the man is an absolute anomaly. And I like him, to be honest. But what do you think about that fight? Like when it comes to the timing of their both careers, like Amanda Serrano got one loss on her record, but Katie Taylor, I mean, she had such a close fight with you. But most importantly, when she fought Delphine Persoon, that first fight, she struggled a lot. And when you combine the fact that Serrano is a southpaw, I mean, you guys, southpaws are one of the most unique fighters in the world. Yeah, I mean, that left hand, most orthodox just can't keep up with the timing, with the range, the distance, and especially with the pressure of Amanda Serrano and her body work, phenomenal body work. But she is coming up a weight class or two weight classes, I believe. So do you think that's going to play a huge factor in that fighter?
I just think this is what makes it a good fight, because I think Katie needs a big occasion to bring the best out in Katie. So when she's not 100% for a last fight and the fight before or whatever it was, like, she doesn't need to be, and she still wins.
Yep.
But you know, you can't go through every fight being perfect, and we expect such a high standard from Katie that when it's not that clinical, crisp performance, everyone's like, she's on the slide.
Yep.
So I do think that she will be better, but at the same time, like you said, I do think Katie's got Achilles heels, and southpaws. If you look at it, amateurs, the people that she's fought and had close fights with, your Gulsum Tartars, your Sophia Ochegava, myself, we're southpaws. You can easily draw Katie into doing what you want, like Persoon did. You can make it a fight, and Katie, once you hit Katie, she's like, nah, you're not hitting me like that. I'm coming at you. So she will be drawn into a fight with Serrano. Serrano can punch. Serrano's got a good engine, and I just think them things. It's just all wrong for Katie, and maybe with the timing, because she has been, I was fortunate to only start boxing when I was 21, so I haven't been boxing since I was 10. So my, I've probably have had a few more years and bits in the tank because I've had them breaks, and because I didn't start till I was later. Katie's been boxing since she was a kid, since she was 9, I think it was. So that's a long time. That's a lot of miles on the clock. So is time catching it? I don't think so. I just think we expect so much of her. But I do think Serrano is all wrong for her.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you just got me 10 times even more excited for that fight. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Really, I mean, you're talking about 50-50 matchups all over the place. But most importantly, the most important fight of all, your fight next weekend when you fight she came in on short notice, I believe, Chris Namos. Tell me, how does Natasha Jonas, Miss GB, become a world champion? When you visualize that fight, when you lay down at night, envisioning that moment when you're crowned a world champion, how does the fight unfold next weekend?
I won't be giving away too many tactics, just in case she's watching.
Just a tiny bit.
Obviously, she's naturally a lot heavier. Obviously, she's a lot taller than me. So I will be, having to work on my advantages of speed, of movement, and that's how I win. I don't like to say, oh, I'll stop it in round 1, or it's not going the distance. I'm not that type of person. I prepare for the best version of the person that's in front of me and everything that she's got. So I prepare, for 12 rounds, never mind 10. So I'm expecting it to be a fight to point. I'm expecting, just to use my speed and my skills, because I think I've proved that I have them. And just, like you say, come out victorious. I've seen it, I've smelt it, I've held the belt in my dreams. All I have to do now is go out on the night, do what I've been doing in the gym for the last 10 weeks, and and make that dream come true. And respect to her, because I did have a different opponent that I was working on, which isn't that much dissimilar to her. She's a lot. I think Namos is a lot more attacking minded than the original opponent, but this is still got to be the same result, the same output, and the same, things that I'm bringing to the table.
Absolutely. Well, we absolutely can't wait for that moment, and you truly deserve to become a world champion. You've always went through the road that requires the most resistance, and you were never afraid to take that road. And that is why I truly believe that next weekend you're going to be crowned a world champion, because you've earned it. I mean, if anyone earned it in the sport, it is you. So cannot wait for that fight. And thank you so much for your time, champion. And looking forward for the fight.
Cheers. Thank you. And thanks for having me on. Thanks, for being very supportive of female boxing and for boxing on a whole. So I appreciate that. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, champ. Thank you so much. Blessings.
I'll speak to you next time as the new champion and
the new champion. That is right. Absolutely.